The Chapins haven't wanted to have anything to do with the Idaho case this entire time, but the house finally being demolished, that they have a comment on. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. I'm going to talk to you guys today about the responses of the victims' families of the Idaho 4 situation when it comes to the house demo. Now, of course, we're really just hearing from Steve Goncalves and the Goncalves family, who technically speaks for the Mogens and for the Kernodle family at the same time. And then we have Ethan's family, the Chapins, and they're literally doing a complete 180 to what's going on with the way that the Goncalveses are handling things for the other 3 families.
Ethan Chapin's mom, Stacy, has given that statement to me saying, you know, we're okay with this at this point. We agree with the university. We think it's in the best interest of the kids who are there, including her 2 kids and the community as a whole.
And there's a lot of mixed feelings about that. I have mixed feelings about it. I'm going to be doing a video later about some statements that Steve Goncalves stated in this interview that he did with News Nation about the house demolition. But I wanted to separate them because for the house demo, I completely agree with the families. It shouldn't be going anywhere. The house should be standing until trial is over. And Steve is right whenever he says,
so we don't have a trial date, but we have a date to have largely the biggest piece of evidence being destroyed, which just seems backwards.
It's insane to me, and this is just me, that this whole situation and everyone involved in, you know, the whole like processing and the case and everything is more concerned about getting rid of the house than making sure that this thing actually goes to trial. And I understand it's like an eyesore, okay, you know, it's not cute anymore. It's been all boarded up and it has a big old fence in front of it, and it's probably devaluing the neighborhood. Let's just think realistically here, okay? Whenever things happen in neighborhoods, the property values go down in the areas and the houses around it. And so I can just imagine in this market that they want to hurry up and get that thing out of there because it's maybe even affecting tuition. Well, yes, in my previous videos, I mentioned how the university is probably getting more donations than normal because there's people feeling bad for the community and wanting to be sympathetic and supportive, but there's probably also a lot less people wanting to go there. That's just my personal opinion, just based off of the way that we've seen things happen. I know that as a parent, if we were living in that area and my daughter was starting to look at colleges, that would definitely not be on our list. So, like I said, I understand like the innocent side reasoning for wanting to get rid of the house, but in reality, it should stand until trial. The right thing to do, the moral and ethical thing to do, the thing to do that would make the families, at least the majority of them, feel more secure about the case is to keep it. And not only that, but what if something does go wrong here? Okay, what if Bryan isn't the guy? Or what if Bryan isn't the only guy? And what if something in the house can prove that and they can't go back and get what they need in order to complete the investigation and give true justice to these victims because the house is gone? What if they can't do that? What if there's an absolute insane situation that ends up happening and they detrimentally need the house and they've made the mistake of getting rid of it? But it also confuses me as to why the defense is so agreeing to all of this. Okay, let's stop right there before I get into the last question that I want to give you guys at the end of this video. And let's go ahead and read the Goncalves family's actual statement regarding the situation. Let us ask this. Isn't it better to have the King Road house and not need it than need the house and not have it? I completely agree. That has been our question to the prosecution and the University of Idaho for the entire time the demo of the King Road has been an issue. But why is it even up for discussion? Exactly my point too. This is one of the most horrific crimes in the history of Idaho, and the University of Idaho wants to destroy one of the most critical pieces of evidence in the case. I agree. And it is also important to make note that there is now a demolition date before there is even a trial date set. This alone speaks volumes. Yes, I agree too. It is obvious from the 2 recent visits to the house by both the prosecution and the defense that there is still evidentiary value in having the King Road house still standing. I agree, even though I have made flip-flop statements. And I still kind of feel the same way, but I can't, for some reason, I can't let go of one or the other. So that's just, it just is what it is. I guess because my brain is constantly able to see like two different sides to things, or, more than one side to situations. Because like I've mentioned, they've changed the structure of the house. The way that noises move through it and things like that is not the same anymore. They've removed like pieces of wall, pieces of flooring, things like that, right? But then again, they also stated that they had all the scanning and everything done prior to October, but then they were like ecstatic. Let me just put it like that because can't for some reason think of another word right now, about the fact that things were pushed back because the speedy trial thing was waived. Then now they were able to go back in and complete the Pharaoh scanning and like have it actually done the right way, is the way that it came out to me. I think maybe the reason why I'm like flip-flopped on it, because regardless, flip-flopped for reasoning or not, the house should stand until trial. Plain and simple. Okay. It's biologics, it's DNA. What if something's in there that they missed? What if something's in there that, needs to be tested? What if the weapon? What if the weapon is in there? Now, I highly doubt it, but what if? Okay, the what ifs are the biggest thing. That's why this first statement is golden. Isn't it better to have the King Roadhouse and not need it than need it and not have it? Perfect. That's literally all that even needs to be said here, honestly. But we are going to continue to read the statement. There may be additional discovery by either party that prompts one side or the other to go back to the scene of the crime. There has always been a dialogue about the 3D imaging, and they are building a model to replicate the home, etc. First and foremost, what a waste of state money and resources. I mean, yeah, honestly, I agree, especially since they've had to do it twice now. And I guess that's a good question because it's the feds that apparently went back and did the Pharaoh scanning. So is the state having to pay the feds for that? I wonder how that works. Nothing replaces the real thing. Yes, I agree too. Jurors are notoriously unpredictable, and they tend to make decisions on a variety of facts and circumstances. It would be foolish of us to try and foresee what they will want or need to make a just verdict in this case. And let me pause right here because I was watching Duty Ron the other day. By the way, we're going to be talking about Kylie Rodney here soon because the CHP report is still not completed. And from what I'm understanding from CCTV's videos this week, it's still like 3 months out before the CHP report on the vehicle is completed. But Nick Wren has been making the rounds here pretty good lately. And I've been listening to a lot of his interviews, and I don't know. I just want to talk about it. I have a bunch of notes. Like, I've been taking a bunch of sticky notes on all of the things that Nick Wren has been saying on all these things. He's been on Duty Run, and he did like a round of questions with CCTV, and we're just going to talk about it. But I'm mentioning Duty Run and I'm mentioning Nick Wren and all of that to say this. They were talking to Nick Wren a few days ago, but they were touching on the house demolition. And not only does Ed Wallace, the forensic expert on Duty Ron show, mention the fact that he believes the house should be left the hell alone. Okay, the house should be left alone until after trial. They agree with that sentiment. But something that Duty Ron said that I sort of knew the details of, but not the specifics, was that in the Murdaugh trial, like, okay, I knew that the jurors had gone to the house, right? I knew that they had like gone and walked the grounds and like seen the area and everything of where stuff happened. But I didn't know that it was on the day that they handed down the guilty verdict. Okay. I had no idea that it was like that dramatic. That could happen here. Adding this in while editing, and I should have mentioned this, remember that we found out that at least 6 jurors, I think it was 6, right, were asking for more information in the grand jury situation, okay? Now, the part that makes that even more confusing is that there's no way in hell, okay, there's no way in hell that the prosecution and the defense know that that's actually what happened during just the grand jury, where it's like, what, just like the minimum, just enough to say it's a possibility, and now we need to go to trial to figure out whether this guy is actually innocent or guilty, right?
we already know that there were people there needing more information than what they were given. They weren't given it, they were denied it. And it was all these different laws that are being thrown everywhere for the reasoning why it was okay for them to not get more information. Now, the thing is that we will not probably ever know the way that those 6 jurors that had questions and needed more actually voted. But I can pretty much assure you it was probably the way that this all ended up. So that tells me that even though people have questions and they feel like pieces are missing, they'll still vote in a way that they shouldn't because they still have questions. That's a problem for me that I'm just now thinking of as I'm speaking out loud. But you can't tell me that the state and the defense don't understand that that exact same scenario is most likely going to happen come actual trial. If that's just going on during the grand jury, 6 people at the least, I believe, were asking for more information, that would probably be a definite scenario that they know that they should be preparing themselves for, right? Because they've obviously already seen it happen early on. And knowing that the defense is the one that let that little tidbit of information out during court, okay, given that they're the ones who leaked that info, you'd think that they would be fighting to keep the house up. So that kind of makes the fact that the defense is agreeing to all this even more insane to me, unless they're planning on using it later. But it would be more like Bryan claiming that he wasn't defended correctly. There's like a way that they can claim that their defense didn't do everything in their power. But if Bryan is signing things stating that he's agreeing with the demolition, I don't know if he could use that later if that was what if this whole tactic was, which I don't know. I just Yeah, I should have mentioned the grand jury thing because to me, it preludes to what's going to happen later.
What if they decide, okay, this is insane. I don't know what we're hearing. It doesn't sound like it matches right. We need to see the house. And what if they want to take a trip to the house and they can't? Even though they're trying to tell us, oh, it's not safe, blah, 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 like we saw, they were walking in and out of that house with no masks, no booties on, no gloves, pretty much. Like they were walking through it doing their scanning stuff with no protective gear. So it must not be like a biohazard situation. And it's not like the jury would be spending like hours in that house. They would just be doing like a brief few minute walkthrough because that's what they would need, a feel for the area, right? So I don't know. It's just so ridiculous that they don't see how important this could be. And they're letting what they need for their university and for their money basically come before what's ethically correct. And that's just how I feel about it. Lastly, it states, the family has stressed tirelessly to the prosecution and the University of Idaho the importance, evidentiary and emotionally, that the King Road house carries, but nobody seems to care enough. It's like screaming into a void. Nobody is listening, and everyone tells you how sorry they are for the decision, but the family's opinion isn't a priority. Victims' families have a voice and should be heard and listened to. Which, yes, I do agree. And Steve does make a statement in his interview that he knows that he's not going to fight this forever. He knows the house has to go. But when it comes to timing, that's what matters here. They've been wanting to get rid of it for a long time. They haven't even really cared whatsoever about how important the house is to the case. They've been wanting it gone even before the October trial. They were trying to get rid of it. So them trying to get rid of it now that we have basically like an infinite amount of time until this trial could actually happen, it's not surprising. And maybe they're looking at it more like, okay, this could go on forever. It could be like another 5 years before we have a court date, and we're not keeping this thing here. I'm also really kind of confused about why the university cares so much because it's not on their campus. That's another thing that's kind of always confused me about why the rush. It's not an on-campus sorority house. This is an off-campus house that originally belonged to someone else that donated it to the university, and the university could do with it what they will. But I don't understand if it's not on the university campus and it's out in like literally a private neighborhood, like an actual community neighborhood out in the public, not private, but out in the public, not school grounds. What's the rush? What's the rush to get rid of it if it's not on your school property, actually tainting your school property? What's the rush? Now, besides that question, what did Steve mean when he said this?
The lead investigators at the county, state, and federal level, and it is to my knowledge that they are not in all agreement. And we tried to get them to all come in agreement and address, come out with a formal statement. If they can't all agree, I find it very hard for the parents to all agree.
What are they not all agreeing on? That's a very confusing statement to me, because what I'm seeing is the state and the defense agreeing on mostly everything except for the IGG. They're totally okay with the house being demolished. They both want the cameras to not be present, even though they didn't win that little fight there. But they were agreeing on some things that they technically should not have been agreeing on at all. The only thing that has been a fight is the IGG. So when Steve states this, I'm curious as to what he thinks that they're disagreeing on, that he wants them to come forward with a statement about. Because haven't we all kind of been waiting for them to like address a few things? But that's why I've always kind of said that I believe that they like all this chaos. They like the fact that there's people that get on the internet and discuss so many different topics in one case, because it leaves so many different paths for people to go down. It causes the chaos that they need to work in the silence. You know what I mean? Like in the darkness of all of the chaos. That's why I feel like they purposely did what they did with the car situation, and why they teased the 911 call being released literally like 24 hours before they announced that they arrested Bryan. They do a lot of things to like trigger events for their own benefit. We talk about that on my other channel about how the government does the same thing. Well, cops and stuff do the exact same thing. They put fake bolos out or false information because they know it's going to trigger what they actually need to happen. So maybe that's what Steve's talking about here. Maybe he's talking about the fact that there's so many things going on and so many unanswered questions that if the cops came out and gave a statement about certain things that could be cleared up, there are very small things in this that they could actually give the public information on that would get rid of probably like 85 to 90% of all the crazy guys. Like, let's just face it. They could clean all of this up in literally like 30 seconds if they truly wanted to. But yeah, I guess that's it for this video. We'll be talking about some statements that Steve made in the next one. But don't forget to like this video on your way out and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already. See y'all.